It's time to go through the menus and have a look at what actually goes on this thing. It is really, really simple. There are two controls only. A button on the side, which has multiple functions, and a touchscreen, which also has multiple functions. So let's start at the very beginning. Turning on, as you've already seen, is press the button for a couple of seconds, green light comes on down there, and the gimbal goes into its self-test mode. So there we have it, and now we're up. Very useful thing to remember is you can control where that gimbal points. It will come up automatically set to a horizontal plane looking out, but if you want to scroll up or scroll down with it, you can just press in the middle at the side, move your finger up or your thumb up or down on the screen to scroll. How far you move it controls the speed of the scroll. So you can scroll very, 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 very slowly, or you can scroll quite quickly. You have full control, and that is one of the beauties of scrolling on the touchscreen. A lot of people think, oh, but the Vmate player's got a joystick. That joystick is an on-off switch. When you click it up, it goes at a preset speed. You can change that speed, but you can't change it while you're doing it. On the Vmate, you have absolute control of the rate that you scroll or pan. Tilt or pan, I should say. So panning from side to side is exactly the same method. Pressing the bottom middle of the screen and scroll from side to side. Again, full control of the speed that you scroll at. So quite a useful thing to know. Now I've left this thing pointing straight down at my keyboard and nowhere in the middle. There is a quick way to get back to the middle as well. If I can do this holding the Vmate to the side, I don't know, but I'll try. Basically, swipe your thumb across from the right hand edge to the middle, along the middle of the screen. And there you have it. And you saw it said a little symbol and it said reset, and it's moved the gimbal back up to looking out on a flat plane. Very, very straightforward and very easy to use. You can also flip this gimbal around so that it's facing the other way if you want it in selfie mode. And to do that, very similar to the reset, just slightly different. Swipe your thumb across the screen middle, just past halfway and back again without lifting. So there you go, 180 degree flip. And there's me. So flipping back, exactly the same. So very quick way to flip between screens. Okay, so you've got that sort of basic control there. To start a recording, all you do is press the button on the side briefly, just a little click, and there you go. It will start timing away at the top. Remember, you can scroll up, down, sideways. What you can't do is scroll diagonally, unfortunately, and of course you can reset that gimbal by swiping in from the side. There we go. So very simple. Press the button briefly again, gives a couple of beeps and it stops, comes back to giving you the battery indicator. Just running around those symbols on the screen, by the way. The little symbol down there is meant to look like a video camera to tell you you're on video mode. It's telling me I'm on 1080p 30 frames per second. It's giving me an almost full battery there, and a little symbol there. That symbol is to get to any files you've recorded. So we'll look at that now. If I tap on it, it will bring up a little player with anything that's recorded in there. As you can see at the bottom, it says there is one file of one file. It would obviously tell you which number file you're on and count up the more files that you have. So it's telling me it's an 18-second clip, and it's giving me the option to play it by tapping that button there. And I can stop it by tapping the middle of the screen again, and that pauses it. So very simple. Tap it again when it's on pause, comes back to the play. You can continue watching it or whatever you like. To get rid of that file, you need to swipe up from the middle. Whoops, there we go. And you'll get a little dustbin symbol. Tap on the dustbin and it will ask you to confirm. Press where it says delete, or press the cross if you didn't mean to delete it. I'm going to delete it, so there we go, gone. Little strange thing there. It still gives you the play button even though it's telling you there is no files in there, which I find quite funny. One other little thing to note about all the menus, and this works for every single one, you'll get a little line either on the top, the bottom, the sides, wherever direction you swiped in, basically. That little line is telling you which way to swipe back out of that screen. So I swipe from the line in the opposite direction. So there, if I swipe from that line down the screen, excuse me, losing my voice. If I swipe down, it will close that screen. So there we go, back to the main screen. And always, to get out of your menus, it's always that same technique. Swipe from the line in the opposite direction and away you go. Okay, so I'm just going to turn off for a second. Oops, didn't press it long enough. Press and hold for 2 seconds. And you'll see the little light flashes red when you switch off. And your gimbal, for a short period, will go into this hold mode, which will allow you to put the case on. As you can see, well, now it's gone. It's a lot harder to put that case on than it was when it was in the hold mode. Putting the case on though, very, very simple. The bottom part goes on first. It slides up with the phone clip on the side of the screen. Slide it all the way on, won't go on any other way. The gimbal itself, if you're quick, it's in that position, which is dead easy to do it, but if it's not, you have to hold it in that position. And it goes, so the big slot is down the back for the gimbal motor there. Slide it down until it clicks into place. Case is okay, it's not fantastic. It's not dust proof, waterproof or anything else like that. It does protect the gimbal against knocks. Doesn't protect the back motor, unfortunately, but you know, it's quite a useful case because you can slide this part off, leave this on, mount your phone in the little phone holder there, and use this in conjunction with the app. There's still option to press the button on the side with this on as well. So if you're using the app, this protects all of the gubbins inside there, gives it a little added protection while you're doing that. There is a lot about the Vmate at the moment. In particular, it seems like it's been designed to work with the app. It likes being attached to a phone. There's a lot more features that you can do there. Okay, so now I think what we'll do is just go through the menus as they exist on this and explain everything that it can do. And then we'll go on and explain that same thing on the phone, and I'll give you some real world examples later. So I'm going to slide this back out of the case. I find it easiest to press on the bottom, making sure I'm not pressing that button there. Slide it up a little ways and then take hold and pull it out. Move those out of the way. Okay, so the menus, very, very, very straightforward. The first thing that I'm going to go through are the modes, because there are lots of different modes. If you swipe in from the left to the right, it will bring up which mode you're on. Once you're in here, swiping up or down changes the mode. You have video, photo, pano, time-lapse, slow-mo and night shot. I'll go through each of these individually as they're all slightly different. So video mode, pretty obvious what you'll use it in most of the time probably. Now once it's in the mode that you want, there's a little line again. I'll swipe away from it to get back in. Once I'm in a mode, when I swipe up from the bottom, whoops, try again, I'll get there in the end. I'm hitting the wrong place altogether here. I'm managing to control the screen. Right, hang about. There we go. Right, I've got it working. So swipe up from the bottom. In there you will see a settings button, which is there for every mode. The same items are in that settings menu, and I'll go through them very shortly. And then the other items that are on there will pertain to the mode that you're actually using. So here I'm using video mode, so it's got a setting for resolution, a setting for frame rate, and a setting for the codec. Taking the codec first, two options, H.264, or tap on it and you get H.265 or HEVC if you prefer. HEVC is a more modern codec. It's a variable bit rate. It saves high quality video using less space than 264. Its minus is it's not 100% compatible out there in the world. A lot of devices won't have the codec on it already to use HEVC. So bear that in mind. If somebody hasn't got the codec, it's actually a paid for codec at the moment. It's not freeware. Tap it again, go into 264. 264's been out forever. It's free. Everybody's got it. It records a high quality video, but it doesn't. It does use a little bit more, I should say. It does use a little bit more of your SD card space. Resolution, straightforward. Tap on it and it changes. And it's a really annoying thing. I'm just going to go through to 4K first. Let's tap it again. There's 4K. So at that point, I would be recording 4K. I tap it again when it says 4K. It goes to 1080p. And if I tap it again, it comes up with that really annoying message. It says quality improved, but the duration will decrease. And you say, got it. Now, you'd think once you've done that once, that would be it. But no, it comes up every single time. And it's a fairly obvious thing as well. This is called 1080 plus. And I think we could all guess that if it's 1080 plus, it's going to use more space than 1080p. What it does is actually gives a much higher bit rate from the recording, so you get a finer quality recording, more detail. That's all it is basically, is a higher quality 1080p. Tap it again from there and I'm back to 4K. So I'm going to leave it on 4K for now. And then frame rate, if you tap this, it's changed slightly differently. It actually brings up a sliding menu, which is like the menus used to be before they put this new UI on. Personally, I wish they'd have one or the other. I don't like it when you use a different method for two settings of the same thing. It just feels wrong to me. It feels amateurish. So you can set frame rate anything from 24, 25, 30, 50 or 60. Now obviously if you're here in the UK or anywhere else where they use 50 Hertz, having 50 and 25 can be quite useful because it can get rid of that flicker in the lights for you. If you're in the US where they use 60 Hertz mains, then 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second are going to get rid of that flicker for you. Right, but I think most people will probably end up recording in 30 frames. It's a combination of quality and space, basically. Plus it looks a little tiny bit less clinical than 60 frames per second. It still doesn't look as nice and organic as 24 frames per second would. However, at the moment, 24 frames per second on the Vmate and 25 frames per second don't work very well. I'm hoping Snoppa will get onto those sometime soon. But for now, they drop frames all over the place. They bounce, skip and jump all their way through it. It's not a smooth experience at all. It does not give you that cinematic film feel that you would expect from 24 frames per second. So for the moment, I'm just going to stick in here at 30. Sliding down again, there's a little line, tells me to slide down to come out of it. So that's taken us all the way around the settings for the camera. I'm going to go into that settings menu later. As I say, you'll see it's there for everyone. So if I come out of the settings for the camera and slide across and move to photo, here you'll see it tells us a camera symbol and it says JPEG. If I swipe up from the bottom, I have the option to change the format from JPEG to DNG, DNG being a RAW file, which holds more data than a JPEG. I won't go into the difference between the two. If anybody wants to know, please ask and I'll happily explain the difference. If you're trying to get the most out of your pictures possible and you don't mind spending time in post developing your pictures, if you like, then DNG is the way to go. If you just want quick snapshots, JPEG is the way to go. You can also change your aspect ratio for this as well. So you can have 4.3, 3 to 2, sorry, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, and 16 to 9. So that's standard HD definition. 4 by 3, which is the old squarer TV style that we used to have, and 3 by 2, which is a much more commonly used photographic ratio. It's the ratio that gives you a 6x4 print, for example. So you can choose which of those that you want to do. And those are your only options in there for the camera. There's settings there, as I said, that is there on every menu. So we'll come back to that later. So for the moment, I've set 3 to 2 and JPEG. Sadly, on here, it tells me I'm using JPEG, but it doesn't tell me what ratio I'm using, what aspect ratio. Maybe they'll add that later. If I slide in from the left again, if I go up one, you get to Pano. Pano is Panorama. And on your camera, you get to choose the viewpoint for that. So if I slide up from the bottom, you can see here, viewpoint 90 degrees. That will give me a 90-degree stitched together sequence of shots. And again, you can select the aspect ratio through the same settings as photo. You can also change the viewpoint by tapping on it. You can have 180, which would obviously be viewing everything from your left-hand side right the way around to your right. 270, which is even looking behind you. And 3x3, which takes a grid of 3x3 photographs. So it takes a large square image, if you like. Now, you can take the images with a Vmate on its own, but you can't view them. They will appear as individual photographs. Only when you connect to the app can you actually assemble those photographs. The stitching together is done on the app. So you need to transfer them to the app if you want to stitch them together and get your panoramic view out. So I hope that makes sense. So I'll leave it on 3.3 at the moment. Come down there, 3.2, 3 to 2 ratio. If I come out of that menu and set my Vmate up there on the laptop, press my button briefly, and you'll see the gimbal go around and start taking a series of photos. Hopefully you can see there that the gimbal's gone round on the lower level. Now it's going through the middle, taking 3 more on the same settings, and then it'll go up and take them higher up. And there we go. You can do this handheld, but I don't recommend it. It's better to set it down. As you see, it says completed there once it's done and the gimbal goes back to the center. I wouldn't suggest you handhold it. It's much better to put your gimbal down on something solid while it does it. That way you will get perfectly stitched together panoramas. Okay, so sliding in from the left again. Next one is time-lapse. Now on the Vmate itself, you only have the option of static time-lapse. A static time-lapse means that the gimbal itself does not move; it stays absolutely static throughout. I'm sure you already knew that, but I better state it just in case. The option for trace time-lapse is on the app, and that will allow you to set different points along a line that the gimbal will pass through, and it will move slowly through those as you record your time lapse. So looking at time lapse, if we slide up from the bottom here, if I can get into the menu, there we go. You can set the resolution. At the moment that says 4K. Of course, you've got all the same resolutions as you have for a video. All the time lapse is doing is taking a series of individual pictures at a set interval, which it will then compile into a 30 frame per second video at whatever resolution you set. So the interval setting is there. That says 0.2 seconds at the moment. So every 1/5 of a second, your Vmate will take a picture. This is obviously only any use if you're doing a time lapse of something that is incredibly fast moving, relatively speaking. You're much more likely, if you tap on interval, you can change it. You're much more likely to be using intervals of around a second or two for most things. So your options are 0.2 of a second, half a second, 1 second, 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 8 seconds, and 10 seconds. Those are the gaps between each individual frame that it takes, if you like. So let's give an easy example. If I set this now to 1 second, come out of there, and I have the duration there is set to 10 seconds. Now that isn't the time that it's going to film for. It's not just going to take 10 images and shut down. 10 is seconds is the duration of the finished film. It does it a little bit backwards here on the Vmate. It's a little bit odd. So if it's 10 seconds for a finished film and it's 30 frames per second, it's going to need 300 images. And if it's taking one image per second, that means it's going to take 300 seconds to actually collect those 300 images. So 300 seconds in minutes is 5 minutes, unless my maths is wrong. So your duration that you'll actually film for would be 5 minutes. Your duration can be changed as well, just the same as you did the interval. You have 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 5 minutes. Those are your options for the duration of your film. Not very often that you're going to want anything as long as 5 minutes in a time lapse, but there you go. Now, just a little aside on this, duration, quite important. If you've got something that's moving relatively quickly, say clouds on a fairly breezy day going across in the sky, you might want a half second or 1 second interval. If you're looking at clouds that are moving very slowly on a very calm day, you might want to drop that down to about a 2 second interval, so that you're getting a more smooth appearance to the video and they're not passing by too quickly on it. The other alternative, of course, if you go to record something that is incredibly slow, say a flower budding or something like that, you might want to be recording for 25 hours, which if you set the maximum interval of 10 seconds and the maximum duration of 5 minutes, it will work it out. It will take 25 hours to record. So that's good when you've got something that is changing incredibly slowly. Hopefully that all makes sense. So let me come back out of there. So that's all there is in that one. Let's come back out of the settings and go to the next one. And the next one is slow motion. Very, very straightforward slow motion. Go into its options. You have the speed, which is works in the same way that the resolution does, just a bit confusing. So you have the option of 4 times slower than normal motion, 2 times slower than normal motion, or 8 times slower than normal motion. Now 8 times slower is incredible, actually. It really is quite something. These are all done at 1080p, by the way. You don't have an option on resolution, but at 1080p this is capable of recording 240 frames per second, which gives you that enormous 8 times slow motion, still with a 30 frame per second output. So it's quite impressive, really. Video codec you can change in there. Again, you can choose between H.264 and H.265. And go in, and last one is night shot mode. I don't even know whether I want to tell you about this one. As far as I'm concerned, it's a waste of time, but here we go for completeness. You have an automatic exposure where the camera can decide what it's going to do, or you can choose between these very strange settings, which I don't quite understand. I'm going to have a play with these myself. It says 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, and 4 times, and 5 times, and 6, 7. Oh, it goes all the way up to 7 times. I thought it was only 5. I'm imagining that is the number of frames that this thing takes and then tries to layer together to give you a better picture. I don't know, I'm only guessing. Again, you can choose what format and what aspect ratio you have. Yeah, I'm guessing that 7 times will mean 7 frames. I've tried it in low light, but not too low, and it's come out reasonably well. But I have tried it in a fairly dark area and it looked awful. But maybe I was on the wrong setting. Maybe I needed to try 7 times and see what that brought up. I'll have a play. So far, though, not been impressed. Okay, so let's just go back around to video again. Oops, gone the wrong way. Go that way, we roll on to video. And that last little thing inside these settings that I've been ignoring all the way through, which says settings, I'm just going to run through now. So if we tap on that, there are a number of things in here, a number of options. The first is calibration. If your gimbal isn't performing correctly, you might want to run a calibration. You don't have to run one every time you use it. Only if your gimbal's looking like it's no longer level or something, then you should run through it. There are also some instructions on the official Snoppa group which will tell you things that you can do if your gimbal isn't calibrating perfectly level. Worth trying that before anything else. Snoppa do promise me that shortly they'll have a means of manually calibrating the horizon, and that can't come soon enough. But so I know that some of you have problems, but mine has been, fortunately, touch a bit of wood, it's been fine. Other options in there, it says there a little symbol that looks like an SD card, and it says available. If I tap that symbol, it tells me how much space I've got on the SD card, and also gives me that option to click on format and format my SD card. And there you go, it's fairly quick. And come out of that. Oh, by the way, with the calibration, you need to set it on a firm surface. It's also a good idea if it's clamped in its bracket on a tripod perfectly perpendicular to the ground. Otherwise, it can move during the calibration, and that can cause you problems as well. I don't know if you notice this when it turns on, but that gimbal moves with quite a bit of gusto when it's calibrating, so it can make a problem. Preview governs what this screen size is like. At the moment, it's on the what it calls auto, which, if I come out of this menu, gives you that thin band across the middle, the full frame that the camera can see, and it gives you those icons around it. If I change that by going back into the menu, settings, if I change that preview, the other one is that full screen. So if I come out now, you'll see that instead of the full frame, I've got a full screen, but I'm only seeing the centre part of the frame. That's okay, I suppose, if you're filming a children's party or something like that, where you're really only interested with what's in the middle of frame, that's fine. But if you're trying to shoot something a bit more sensible, where you want to know where everything's in frame, put it on the other setting, which is where this is going back to now. So back into settings, back into the auto, which is the way I tend to use it. Direction works in conjunction with this lens here, which if I get it up fairly close, I don't know if you can see the two dots, one either side. Now this outer lens swivels, and you can swivel it around so those dots are vertical for filming in a camera aspect ratio if you were filming for certain social media platforms, etc. When you change that, you also need to change this direction by tapping on it. Tapping on it so that it matches. So there you go, that's ready for portrait mode, and that's back in landscape mode. You want it to match wherever your lens is set on your gimbal there. Scroll to the side, you get an auto off setting, very, very straightforward. It says 3 minutes on mine there, that means it will go off automatically after 3 minutes if I'm not touching it or recording. Your options are 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 10 minutes. 3 minutes is fine. Brightness, once upon a time in the older firmware, you got a slider for brightness and you could literally adjust it to wherever you wanted it. Now you get 3 options. You either have full brightness for the screen, a dual screen for night, or a half level. There is no in-betweens anymore, which is a bit of a shame because it was quite handy having that full control. Battery, self-explanatory, I hope. I do hope I don't have to explain what that means. It means there's 90% charge in my battery. So if you want a good idea, a better idea of how much charge you've got left, go into your settings menu and have a look. There's nothing else you can do from that but look. Also gives you a firmware version there. As you can see, this one's on v2.0.4.22, as I said at the beginning. And finally, if I go to the next screen, this is the last screen of those settings at the moment. And you get an option to switch languages. You get regulatory information. If I tap on there, all of the relevant documentation that you need, all of those boxes that you need to check in order to operate in different countries. So full Gimbal, full name of the device, etc., and its model and so on, and all the way through FC certification because it's got wireless and a CE certification, etc. All of those things are in there. So if I swipe down, quite a good idea to put them in there on the device actually, because usually they're printed on a little booklet that they send you with a device, which gets lost and of course could be subject to change. Here they can update it when they update a firmware, so that's a clever way of doing it in my mind. Final thing in here is reset. If at any time your gimbal is not performing the way you expect it to, guess what? Press reset. It will factory reset all the settings to default and hopefully then make your gimbal work properly. It will also give you that option of resetting by holding in the power key for 50 seconds. So Snoppa tell me. I'm not quite convinced that it does, but that's what they tell me. 50 seconds is quite a long time. So, but I've not noticed any difference when I've tried it, but there we go. So that's all of the things in the settings menu. Pretty straightforward. It's a really simple camera, very simple to operate. So now we've gone through all those modes and we've gone through all the different settings available in each mode. The last thing to go through on this is to swipe down from the top, and here you get gimbal modes. Now gimbal modes are strange little things. If I start at FPV, if I tap that, the camera has just reset itself, the same as if I'd done that slide from the right business. And now in FPV mode, that camera will face in the direction that I point the camera. So if I spin the camera all the way around, slightly damped, but you see it follows. It will also follow if I tilt the camera up and down. And it will also, and this is the strange bit, follow me if I go round, even upside down or all the way over, it will follow that motion. It's fantastic to give you that first person viewpoint. If you're, say, riding your skateboard through some half pipes or whatever, it's going to follow your motion and precisely. There are times when you can use it artistically as well. Quite a useful setting to have. So that's FPV. Beneath it, it says lock. Lock is very, very slightly different. This time, wherever I'm pointing that screen, now I'm going to lean in and press lock. Try and get onto lock. There we go. So wherever that lens is pointing when I press lock, it will try to keep it pointing in that direction. So if I tilt up and down, you can see that the gimbal is correcting the lens. If I try to tilt from side to side, again, that pitch motion is being corrected for. And importantly, if I try to pan, it's still keeping that same angle out. Still looking straight forward when I pan. So that's lock. Full setting. That allows me to pretty much follow every direction I want to go in, while keeping a level horizon and damping movement down a little. So if I pan from side to side, it will pan from side to side, but you'll see it's quite damped and it does it quite slowly. Again, if I tilt it up or down, it will follow that motion, but it'll follow it quite slowly in a very damped, sedate way. What it won't do is roll. So it will keep that horizon level. So that's your full setting. That's probably one of the settings that you'll use most. Going back then, we have pan setting, or pan, very straightforward on pan setting. Unlike the full setting now, if I tilt backwards and forwards, you'll see it's keeping the lens in the same plane looking forwards all the time. If I roll, again, it will keep the horizon level, but if I pan, it will allow that same panning motion that I had before. So it's very good if you want to keep that lens pointing in the same level throughout a recording and not having it tilt up or down. If you swipe, you get a couple more options in there. You get a fast full and a fast pan. And just let's go straight from pan to fast pan. Now, when I pan this camera, you'll see how much faster the gimbal responds. Way, way, way quicker. Much quicker response. If I go to full, now When I tilt up or down, it responds very much faster than it did before. Side to side, very much quicker than it did before. Quite handy if you're following fast moving action, if you're following a basketball game or following racing cars around the circuit, wherever it might be. Obviously you want to choose the fast options there. Those normal options are very, very damped and very slow, maybe slightly too damped, but there we go. So very, very simple thing. If I tap on full again, go back into there, just give you that demonstration again with it on the normal full mode. See how much slower that panning action is. It's far, far slower than it was before. And again, when you tilt up and tilt down, it's taking a long time to come to that point. So much more damped. Okay, so those are all those modes. How those actually help you when you're filming, I'll record some footage and do a little video on that shortly, just to give you an idea of how you can use those different modes when you come to it. Basically though, that's it. I'm in the normal full mode there. I'm going to come out of it. I can see that my camera is probably not at exactly the right angle because I've been twisting it here, there and everywhere. So I'm going to just slide across from the middle to the centre, and the reset thing comes up there, and as you saw then, it levelled out that camera again so that it's in the perfect position. So folks, that are all of the settings on that camera. What you need to do now is pick it up and go out and play with them and find out what works for you in different circumstances. Okay, so I just want to quickly explain one little thing. When I'm talking about these different movements, what I actually mean by tilt is to tilt the unit forwards or backwards, like so. When I say pan, I mean moving the unit or moving my hand in that side to side motion. And when I say roll, I mean changing the level of the horizon. At the moment this is in full mode, so you see there in full mode it followed every single movement. If I just very quickly, just to show you the difference, go to say pan mode. Now in pan mode, when I roll, you'll see the gimbal does its best to stay level. When I tilt, again the gimbal tries to keep looking forwards. And when I pan, it pans too. So it goes from side to side. As you can see, it's really damped in the normal mode. In that fast pan mode, where it responds so much more quickly, panning motion is much more in line with your hands. So if you're following something fast, that is definitely the one to go for, as you see. But once again, keeping a level horizon in the other two planes. If you've got the thing in your palm, by the way, you can on the app go in and adjust where the palm looks from when you calibrate it, so you can reset its calibration centers, if you like, and you do that, and they are they're down as the P, Y and R axis. Actually, they use a slightly different terminology there. They use a shipping terminology where that is pitch, that is yaw, and we're calling that pan, but obviously, so they don't want to call pan and yaw the same, something starting with a P again, just simply because of that difficulty that would create. So they call panning motion yaw. So they have pitch, yaw and roll, sticking to the nautical terms. So there you go, hopefully that just helps as well, seeing what the camera is doing when I'm doing those different movements. Okay, thank you. Hope this has been useful. Okay, here is FPV mode. Whatever movement I make, the camera follows. I'm completely upside down right now. The camera has followed that movement all the way around, as you can see. If I tilt up, or down, or roll side to side, camera follows that motion. If I pan left or right, my camera follows that motion. It basically goes where your eyes would be going if you were looking straight forward. Hope that one's explained. On to the next. Now we're looking at lock mode on the Vmate, and actually I do believe that this mode doesn't work correctly at the moment. I believe what a lock mode should try to do is keep that gimbal looking forward no matter what the motion. So if I tilt my hand so I'm tilting the body of the camera forwards, it should try to keep that horizon level, and again if I do the backwards it's the same. If I roll from side to side, it tries to keep that horizon level, and if I pan from left to right, it should try to stay looking in that same direction, but it actually pans. For me, it's doing exactly what pan mode does, so I think Snoppa need to have a look at that one. I don't think it's quite doing what it should. If I pan the body of the camera, I would expect it to try and keep looking at one central point. It doesn't do that. It seems to do what pan mode does. So let's have a look at pan mode. Okay, so here we are. We're now in pan mode. Once again, if I tilt my hand, the body of the camera forwards by tilting my hand, if I tilt the body of the camera the other way, it keeps that horizon as level as possible. If I roll from side to side, it also keeps that horizon as level as possible. However, if I pan, it pans with me fairly slowly with a lot of damping because it's on the normal pan mode. So pan, it swings around, goes in the direction I point the camera, but it does it in a very slow and controlled manner with a lot of damping, maybe a little bit too much damping. It takes a little bit too long for my liking to come to where it should be. And if I go back to the centre, there you go. So pan mode and lock mode to me are doing exactly the same at the moment, which I think is, as I say, I think it's an error. We'll talk to Snoppa. The two modes, fast full and fast pan, are very similar, except they respond quicker. So now in fast full, if I pan from side to side, it will pan far more quickly. Still some damping there, still that little bit of a slow finish to the move, and a little bit of a drag behind where you are, but much faster and much more in line with where you actually point the camera. And on full mode, that means tilting up and tilting down, but it still resists roll from either side. My goodness, it's windy today. So that's fast full. Okay, thank you. If this has been useful, keep watching, because in the next one I'm going to go through the app itself. We're going to look at how all of the controls on the app give you different things, the different modes that are available on the app that are not available on the unit itself, and vice versa. Be quite useful again. I do feel that this thing is built to be used with the app. It does feel that when it's with a phone, it's slightly more complete. However, I do feel that when it's with a phone, they haven't quite got the control right on the phone yet, and it's not as sensitive as it is using it on the screen of the Vmate itself, where it is incredibly controllable. Anyway, hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye for now.